there is a chance, God willing, and some of you will know because you listen to this at different times, and I don't yet know. There's a chance that's being reported that the president will be able to go back to the White House today. We don't know yet. And as I've said, because I know people listen on demand, and in some places we're delayed a little bit as a show, that I'm not sure if this will hold up, meaning that you might know whether that's true or not by the time you hear this. I don't know as I go to air right now, but wouldn't that be a fantastic thing? And it would be such an inspiring moment for the country. The 74-year-old president of the United States who has some additional risk factors thrown in here would be able to get in and out of the hospital in a couple of days. Now, they might say, oh, but Buck, he had world-class medical care. And I'd say, yeah, I mean, that's true, but remdesivir and dexamethasone, this is standard of care in a lot of hospitals now for people that go in with COVID. They can do this for people, and they do. So what exactly is so different about it? You know, this isn't like they're doing some surgery that's only been performed once before in the history of the human race, right? This is actually the president's getting very good care and obviously a lot of close monitoring. But the basic approach is what the standard of care would be in a lot of good hospitals across the country. Look, there are crappy hospitals. That's a whole other conversation. But in a lot of good hospitals, this is what you would get. This would be reasonable. And Dr. Conley, when he was asked, and I mentioned this before, and I skipped on to something else, but when Dr. Conley was asked about why he didn't want to get into too many specifics about the president's health, here's what the media seized on right away. Play 4.
That the president had been administered oxygen.
It's a good question.
Thank you.
I was trying to reflect the upbeat attitude that the team, the president, that his course of illness has had. I didn't want to give any information that might steer the course of illness in another direction, and in doing so, it came off that we were trying to hide something, which wasn't necessarily true. So here I have it. He is the fact of the matter is that he's doing really well. That he is responding, and as the team said, if everything continues to go well, we're going to start discharge planning back to the White House. That's it. Thank you, folks.
Discharge planning back to the White House. Wouldn't that be so good for the country? Wouldn't it be so inspiring and encouraging for people to see that the president of the United States was able to beat this thing pretty quickly? And that means that, look, everyone's got a shot. Now, I know there's still people who are dying from this. And if the president were 10 years older, this might be a different story, right? I mean, the higher you are in the age category, the higher your risk. That's absolutely proven by the numbers. There's no doubt about that. You know, it's dangerous in your 70s. It's very dangerous in your 80s. And we need to take precautions to protect seniors. But the way this has now been framed for the rest of us, it's, well, you can't just take precautions to protect seniors because the 8-year-old could get it in school, and then the 8-year-old goes home and gives it to mom and dad, and then mom and dad go to visit grandma, and then grandma gets it, and then she does. I mean, if that's how we're going to view epidemiology, we're just going to be going through lockdowns and public health panics for the rest of our lives. I mean, nothing is perfect here, folks. And there are real costs to the imposition of these different rules that we've been obeying, and the upside of it has been shaky at best. And I'm somebody who, as I was saying in the very beginning, I was riding the absolutely jam-packed New York City subway every day during this thing. I mean, in the worst phase of spread, the 45 days or so before they got into the lockdown, when this thing was bouncing all over New York City, I was on the subway every day. I know this might sound a little bit off to you, but I haven't been tested for antibodies. They say now the antibodies may fade, at least from being able to be tested after a few months. But I'm pretty sure I had it right around New Year's. And I haven't said that, I think, before on the show. Maybe I mentioned to you, but I had a bizarre cough like I've never had before that was waking me up in the middle of the night for a few days, and definitely had a fever and definitely had the shake, had shakes. And it was bad. And I'd never had anything like that before. And I thought it might be like a mild flu or something, but maybe it's just coincidence, but it seems like a heck of a coincidence. My point here being that we went through the worst of it here, and I've been pretty consistent on this all along that we got to get back to normal life as soon as we can, and there will be some risks associated with this. I think I saw that someone in college did get this and die. That's terrible, but people die. Every year there are college kids who will die from, I'm trying to think of what it is. I think it's encephalitis that you can get, and that spreads in colleges and spreads in prisons, very densely populated environments very quickly. There's other diseases, too, that we know, the flu, obviously. I remember I had a guy in my freshman dorm, not on my freshman floor, had to be rushed to the hospital because he was wrestling with somebody and didn't realize it, but he had already had an inflamed appendix, and it burst while he was wrestling. I guess he had a mild appendicitis and didn't know. He almost died. I mean, things happen. I know it sounds like, fuck, you're talking about these random stories or cases, but things happen. You can get diseases anywhere, and you can die. People get MRSA. They get antibiotic-resistant bacteria from, a towel at the gym or something. And there's some story out there. It's terrifying. I'm not even going to talk about it. What happens? There's a bacteria you can get from being too close to your dog. And I'm like, look, I still snuggle my pooch all the time. I mean, we're all taking rather calculated risks and put in place the basic mitigation for them. This is about life philosophy at some level. This is about your approach to things. I went, and I've been to events where there were a lot of people at this point who were unmasked. And I've always said, I'll wear a mask because I will respect the house rules, so to speak, wherever I am, because it's not worth it to get into a fight with people over this stuff. And if it makes people feel better, it's not that much of an imposition. When people ask, when there's recommendations, I have no problem. My problem is that now if you're walking alone outside on the street, and they're all libs, I mean, you can tell they're all MSNBC watchers, they stare you down from 20 feet away. Why aren't you wearing a mask? And you're like, because I'm outside and because I'm not near anyone and because I also have about a 1 in 10,000 chance of actually having, by the numbers in New York, 1 in 10,000 chance of having COVID. That's why. So your chance of getting it from me is about 1 in 10,000, and there's a 1 in 10,000 chance that I actually even have it in the first place. You can just multiply those denominators to get the actual risk factor, folks. Real low is the answer. Real low. People don't want to hear it, though. They don't want to hear it because, as I've said, look at the mechanism around this, the narrative. We often talk about narrative here. Why do liberals like the current narrative? What does it give them? All the anger and frustration they feel is channeled toward Donald Trump. Even for state-level restrictions, even, New York is 8-1 Democrat. Is it just the Republicans here that don't wear masks? Is that what we're supposed to believe? I think there are people who would answer yes to that, like the morons they are, but it's really astonishing. I think it's also interesting that there's such a willingness to blame, and you see this all the time, to blame Trump supporters and blame Republicans for a disease that has hit people in urban areas that are Democrat controlled much worse than anywhere else, and that has hit minorities at a much higher rate of lethality than other places. Now, I understand there's a lot of complex reasons for this. I mean, epidemiology is some very next level stuff. It's not easy to understand all the different variables and factors that go into this. But we're not having that adult conversation. We're having a point fingers. You're the problem. You're the reason this is going wrong. It's so destructive at a time when we already have politics pulling us all apart. You almost want to just walk around saying, look, I don't want anyone to get this, but I also want to start living life again. What are we doing? And you'll notice the media has no interest in calculating the drug abuse, suicides, child abuse, and other aspects of this, nor do they have a particular interest in seeing how many people have lost their life savings during this, their life's work with the businesses that have been destroyed. And what is that worth to you? They're not interested. The narrative here is that if only Joe Biden was president, this would all be better. This is Trump derangement added to a pandemic. And it's disturbing to see how many people fall for this, how many people believe it. It's truly disturbing, but that is where we are. And I think we need to understand they're only going to ratchet it up even more in these next, these next less than 4 weeks, less than a month, we have this election. What does the COVID-19 pandemic have to do with you losing your home? Well, it's pretty straightforward, you see. The FBI is telling people that cybercrime's up in general about 75%, and home title theft is a cybercrime. The bad guys find your home title information online, they kick you off using a quitclaim deed, put themselves on, and then take out loans against your home's equity. You often won't find out about this until you receive the payment notices or perhaps even a foreclosure notice in the mail. The usual identity theft services do not protect you against this. You have to protect your home's title with Home Title Lock. Just go to HomeTitleLock.com. Use the promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. You can also check at the site to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it yet. Create a virtual barrier around your home's title with Home Title Lock. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. Use the promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. Do it today. Take action. Protect your home and its value. Everybody's rooting for the president to make a full recovery, right? I mean, everyone's being a decent, reasonable human being during this period, right? No, of course not. Of course not. We're talking about Democrats. They're completely out of their freaking minds. You had SNL over the weekend, which still exists, even though it sucks and has been unwatchable garbage really for the last 20 years, maybe the last 15 years. A lot of just woke bull crap. It's just garbage. It's just not good. I'd say it has one sketch every 2 years or 2 seasons that's kind of funny and worth watching. Other than that, it's like watching a bunch of annoying liberal college students who think they're so funny and doing like the funniest bits, and it's so funny. It's horrible. You had Chris Rock on SNL over the weekend. Remember, the president's in the hospital. He does have what could be, for his age group, a lethal disease. Here's what this famous multimillionaire comedian has to say. Play 5.
Before we even get started, let's say the elephant in the room. President Trump's in the hospital from COVID, and I just want to say my heart goes out to COVID.
They're all laughing. It's so funny. That's fun. Is that funny? Really? Would it be funny if that were one of Chris Rock's parents in the hospital with COVID? Would that be funny? Would that be a funny joke? It would be funny if it was, your father, your mother in the hospital with COVID-19. Are you making jokes about how you're rooting for COVID? Is that supposed to be really? That's supposed to be funny, huh? This just goes to show you the corrupt mind that the libs now share. I mean, they have a hive mind. There's a collectivist approach to all of this, where there's no decency or morality that can be extended to Trump. And when you ask them why, or when you try to get greater clarity on what it is that makes Trump so beneath any feelings of warmth or decency, they just start spewing a bunch of nonsense talking points because they've been brainwashed. Trump doesn't care about children in cages. Well, I mean, actually, for example, if you look at that issue, the president did change the policy, and it was because of an intentional fraudulent surge at the border by people exploiting our immigration laws. But yes, there were parents separated from children. It was done because whenever you're arrested, you are separated from kids, and they were breaking the law. But the president addressed that, and there was no more separation. But they'll still say he doesn't care about it. Okay, well, it was a policy that was inherited, and that was the law, and the president didn't write the laws. Or the president's racist, and they'll talk about Charlottesville. And you'll say, well, hold on a second. Charlottesville, the transcript shows that he didn't say that the neo-Nazis were good people, but no, that doesn't matter. The facts don't go through. The facts do not break through the bubble. They do not break through the echo chamber. They simply do not care. And the fact that people would laugh at this, I mean, I will tell you this. There was never a moment in time where I wished ill health or any kind of physical harm or danger upon the president when it was Obama or his family. And if I had ever seen anybody that I knew on the right who was publicly doing that, I would have chewed them out. And we police our own on the right when we see crap like that. We do. And the libs would say no. We absolutely do. I'm talking about people that have some clout and respect in the community. I'm not talking about some rando who's got a blog that 10 people read. there is a fundamental morality here that we must keep even when the opponents that we have politically do not. And that's hard to do. Trump is an escalation in the tactics used to fight back against the left, and it's the right move. Otherwise, what we just have is a lot of people losing gracefully. The Mitt Romney approach, just lose gracefully to progressives, let them enact their policies, destroy this country, lose gracefully. Lose and smile, and they'll pat you on the head and send you on your way. That was the old Republican Party. Really, the only thing that stopped that from becoming even more apparent was that we were fighting a war against radical Islam for a while, which united conservatives and Republicans and some Democrats for a bit. It didn't last very long, did it? But even when we're doing that, even when we're willing to fight against opponents who don't do so with honor, who don't do so with decency, we need to remember during all of that we maintain decency, that we maintain some fundamental, foundational morality during all of this. Because what we have been seeing from Democrats while the president's sick in the hospital should both be appalling but also motivating. It should motivate you all to go out and support this president in every way that you can. It should motivate all of us to make sure that we get every single person we know, every single individual to go out there and support the president. You don't want anyone who's on the fence, an independent, a Trump supporter who stays home. And you got to remember moments like Chris Rock making first of all, it wasn't even a clever joke. It's gross. But making jokes like that, because when Trump beats COVID right on schedule, which I am predicting and very confident he's going to, and then handily beats Joe Biden, and the LIBS celebrities and the journos all have a mass hysteria meltdown, they will have earned every second of their own deranged anguish for the next 4 years of the Trump presidency. This time around, I do plan on being somewhat of a sore winner, as I've told you. I have no problem with laughing and pointing and saying, I told you so, because I can tell you this, they're going to loot and riot and destroy no matter how we act afterwards. So we wouldn't do that. That's that baseline morality. If Joe Biden wins, I'm going to say, all right, let's clean ourselves up, rally the opposition, try to take, as much as we can of the midterms and get ready for defeating Joe Biden, or really Kamala Harris, because we all know how that's going to go. Biden's going to step down. He's going to step down. That's going to happen. But you would see right now, this is a point at which there should be no politics. Everyone should just be rooting for. And look, President Obama put out a good statement about Trump. There have been Democrats who, not all Democrats are hateful. I understand that. I admit there are Democrats who are friends of mine, who are good people. But I'm talking about the overall mentality of the left, the Democrat Party, the dominant narrative, the dominant feelings among those on the left who make the opinions, who make the narratives. And it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Here's Senator Dick Durbin, play 8.
Well, first, Stephanie, let me tell you, I wish the president and first lady a speedy recovery. Politics aside, we should be human beings first and foremost. But second, let me tell you, this president has never taken COVID-19 seriously. From the beginning, misleading the American people, not showing national leadership when we needed it, absolutely, for testing and PPE, ignoring the advice of experts from the start, refusing to wear masks, continuing to have these mass rallies and put people at risk, and then he pulled it off again last night while a patient at Walter Reed. Imagine now that those Secret Service agents in that car with him and others now have to quarantine themselves for 14 days because this president wanted to wave from his car as he went past his supporters. It just shows the kind of approach to this deadly virus that a president should not have. It's a terrible message to the American people.
I hope he gets better, but it's all his fault. That's what the Democrats are telling you. I want to take a step away from all the Trump COVID hospital stay stuff for a moment. Update you here on Brionna Taylor's family asking the Kentucky governor to appoint a new special prosecutor. This is from ABC News. Saying their fight for justice is not over, Brionna Taylor's family asked the governor of Kentucky to appoint a new special prosecutor to reopen the case and slammed State Attorney General Daniel Cameron for intentionally not presenting homicide charges against 3 white officers who fatally shot the 26-year-old black woman in her own apartment. The request was made in an open letter to Governor Andy Beshear and came a day after the public release of 15 hours of recordings of a 3-day grand jury hearing, which resulted in one officer being indicted on wanton endangerment charges, but not for Taylor's death. Unfortunately, Cameron did not serve as an unbiased prosecutor in this case and intentionally did not present charges to the grand jury that would have pursued justice for Ms. Taylor, reads the letter addressed to Beshear, posted online by Taylor's family attorney. End quote here. This is from ABC News. You're going to see a lot more of this, folks. I didn't get the prosecutor I want, so let's demand a new special prosecutor who can bring new charges against uncharged people. Now, this is really a kind of abuse within the system or abuse of the system for partisan ends. Oh, well, let's hand it to a special prosecutor now. Based on what? Based on we don't like the decision the last prosecutor made. Our whole system is that we have people that are in positions of authority. And look, prosecutors, very little oversight. It's a big problem. It's not like I'm a big fan of the way that prosecutions often happen in this country. But the way it usually goes down, we've got people who are in charge of making this call, usually at either a district attorney, a state's attorney, or U.S. attorney. And it's their call. And sometimes it's a close one. But now we have a situation where when charges aren't brought to the satisfaction of BLM activists, then they turn up the political pressure. The mob essentially gathers outside, sometimes literally does this. This is what they've done. This is what they did in Omaha, Nebraska, for that individual, the bar owner, who was being charged with murder for defending himself. You're not allowed to attack somebody who has a gun and just assume they're not going to use the gun, and they're supposed to assume that you're not going to use their gun on them. No. If I see that somebody's got an open carry or concealed carry going on, I'm not thinking, I'm going to punch this guy in the face as part of a mob because he's never going to use that on me. If I think that and I get shot, it's on me. But don't worry, that's never going to happen. But in that case, the initial prosecutor, this is now this is the way the Alinskyite socialist leftist mob goes about its business. When they don't get the politically motivated charges they want against an individual for self-defense or against a police officer or an incident like this, they demand a special prosecutor comes in. Oh, let's bring in somebody else to look at this, as if they'll be happy with that. Why not bring in a special prosecutor after that special prosecutor? Why not bring in 10 special prosecutors to see if you can get one who brings charges? Remember when during the Hillary Clinton email fiasco, let's take a step back and remember that for a moment. During the Hillary Clinton email fiasco, there was this story that you'd hear, this narrative of events that James Comey offered up with no prosecutor would have ever brought charges based on what happened here. And then there were a whole bunch of former federal prosecutors who were like, no, actually, I would have brought charges. So all that it really came down to there was the person who got to make the decision, the decider, to borrow from Bush. This is a great word. We should really use that one more. The decider in that case went in favor of Hillary Clinton, but could have gone the other way. And you know what? Unfortunately, that's the system that we have. Because the alternative is what we see here, where there's a political demand. And let me just also be very clear. Murder charges for Brionna Taylor would be insane. Okay? I mean, for the cops that shot her. That would be insane. There's no person who believes that they want. So, I mean, murder charges are completely outrageous. No one even claims the cops meant to shoot her. No one thinks they wanted to shoot her. It was an accident. She was in the line of fire. It would be like if cops were having a shootout with bank robbers and a bullet went over the bank robber's shoulder, the cop fired and hit a little old lady standing 10 feet behind him. That's a tragedy. That's very sad. And the city is responsible for trying to make some form of amends for that financially and otherwise, but it's not a criminal act. It doesn't make the cop a murderer. There's a big difference here. You know, somebody was on a bicycle, a nurse, this terrible story out of New York, a nurse going home, I think it was 7:30 in the morning over the weekend after a long shift at a hospital. She was on a bicycle and I don't know the specifics of how it went down, but a guy on a motorcycle hit her when she was on the bicycle, and she died. And he went into the hospital. He was in critical condition. Being on a motorcycle, a motorcycle is dangerous too. And there's no charges expected. It's a terrible accident. Now, maybe there's civil damages that will come into play, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lawsuit here. But no, I mean, based on the fact pattern here, it was not a murder. It was an accident. And they're pretending like they can't understand this. There's this pretend that they don't know the difference between an accident and a murder. Now, if they're going to say it's reckless endangerment, then they're going to have to get over, or involuntary manslaughter rather. Then they're going to have to get over the hurdle of proving that returning gunfire when you are being shot at by someone is not acceptable. Where did these cops go wrong? That's what the real question has to be. This is why the state attorney general in Kentucky didn't provide murder charges. Where did they go wrong? Because under fire, they weren't good enough shots? Because they didn't have a clear enough view down a dark hallway at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is of everybody that was in the line of fire when they were being shot at? I mean, think about if you applied this logic to the military. Anytime the military had an airstrike that killed an innocent civilian, we would have to have a court-martial and murder charges. But we don't do that, do we? Because we understand that we do the best that we can. But when you're talking about lethal force situations, the world is imperfect. And those who are saying that there needs to be a special prosecutor in Brionna Taylor's case, this is motivated by politics. It's because a lot of people have been talking about this case based on lies. There was no knock. There was a knock. She was shot while asleep in her bed. She was standing in the hallway. I mean, they're saying things that are just not true, and they got everyone, whipped up into this rage. All these BLM activists and Antifa, and people were all angry about this one, right? Antifa and the LIBS and the Democrat Party, and when you look at what actually happened here, it's not true. What they say happened is not true. It is not accurate. And yet now we have to have the appointment of a special prosecutor. I just think that's an issue. I think that's just what you're going to keep seeing in these cases where they go into a decision that they don't like. And so then it's, we need another prosecutor who will give us the decision you want. It's supposed to be about justice, and the process is respected to achieve justice. It's not about a desired political result, but the politicization of prosecutors is one of the biggest problems this country faces right now, and that's what's going on.
Biden went to Michigan on Friday anyway. He tested negative. The virus can take several days to manifest. Did you have any concerns about him coming to your state?
I didn't, because, we know that Joe Biden's been taking this virus seriously. He's been following the science. The Trump administration, on the other hand, has been misleading America, has been ridiculing mask wearing, has downright undermined the efforts that governors like me and your earlier guest, Governor DeWine, have been trying to get people to mask up. This virus doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what side of the aisle you're on. It doesn't care what side of the state line you're on. It is still very present. Joe Biden has been following the science and modeling the kind of behavior that we should all be emulating because our lives are on the line. And that's why I'm so enthusiastic about Joe Biden as our next president, because he's got a plan to clean this up and fix this mess that the Trump virus response has gotten us into.
The Trump virus response. You see that? She's the governor of a state that's had a terrible time. Michigan's had a terrible time with COVID-19, but it's Trump's fault. How does that work exactly? How is it Trump's fault that things have been so bad in Michigan? Oh, he was supposed to create some magic force field around the United States that was going to prevent the virus from spreading here. He allowed states to make their own determinations about what kind of restrictions to put in place, how long they were going to be in lockdown. He allowed all of that. So what exactly was he supposed to do different? This is the part that I want everyone to focus in on, because we got a vice presidential debate this Wednesday. This will come up again there. Hopefully the president will be able to do debate again for a second debate against Biden, assuming that Biden's willing to show up and assuming that Trump is healthy enough. But what was he supposed to do differently? It's really like the personal behavior that, again, their individual hatred of Trump, meaning their hatred of him as a person, is really the main policy complaint too. They just hate this guy. They just freaking hate him. And everything else is secondary to that feeling. Everything else is secondary to that urge. So a lot of us sit around saying, well, hold on a second. You're going to keep talking about how he had a failed response. What was supposed to be different? That he was going to personally wear masks more? It's like the president infected everybody himself. That's the feeling you get from some of this. And Gretchen Whitmer up in Michigan just got smacked down by the state Supreme Court. It said that some of her COVID stuff is a violation of the state constitution. This is not complicated, folks. There's just a lot of cowardice out there right now. So even in the courts, judges don't want to be responsible for this. But there has been abuse of power going on here for months. You can't declare an endless state of emergency with all this arbitrary nonsense going on about, what the numbers are of acceptable. Remember, there have been states, New York's a great example, where they said, okay, when we get to the following numbers, we'll open things up. And then we get to those numbers and they won't open things up. And you say, well, hold on, this is what you promised. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They changed their mind. It doesn't matter. All of a sudden they have a different view of things. You say, well, that feels pretty tyrannical, doesn't it? But no, instead of getting a worthwhile discussion about what could be done now, what should be done now, which in my view is basic mitigation measures for certain, large crowds, things that are going to be possibly super spreader events. There could be some basic mitigation there. But other than that, I mean, indoor dining, all this stuff, bring it back. Let people live their lives again. And if anyone's really concerned about that, stay home. Stay home until you feel like the vaccine is out there or whatever. Otherwise, what? We're all going to stay home because some people are scared? I don't understand. When does that end? Other people have a veto over your most basic freedom, your freedom to see other human beings, to go outside, to breathe fresh air, to leave your home, to run your business. Other people's anxiety has a veto over all that now. You understand that. That's the country that we're living in. That's what Gretchen Whitmer wants for all of us. And you know that this is political because as we're closer than ever to a vaccine, which is obviously the case, we are closer than ever to a vaccine. Somehow they're calling for more draconian restrictions than ever before. Somehow we're supposed to be even more terrified of this than ever before. So, it's very obvious to me. But no, instead we're going to have to keep focusing on the Rose Garden event. Play clip 9.
Americans don't like it when you purposefully, forcefully make a mistake that causes a bigger problem. And in this case, that super spreader event was clearly just unbelievable. Even if you barely believe in the science here, but if you do believe in the science and your doctor has told you to wear a mask to stay safe, looking at that video is hard to watch. How does it impact how people feel about how the Republicans are handling the SCOTUS nomination?
Oh, it's absolutely disastrous on that front because, as Jonathan was saying earlier, that event with Amy Coney Barrett at the White House was meant to change the discourse away from coronavirus. And instead, it massively backfired in the most incredible way. And even before that, there was some evidence that the Supreme Court was not going to be this huge coup for Republicans. Shortly after Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death, there became a bunch of polls that came out that showed that by huge margins, Americans wanted the winner of the presidential election to nominate the next Supreme Court justice.
Oh, we get to hear about polls again. I don't give a crap what polls say about the Supreme Court justice situation. No one cares. We have a process. This would be like saying the president can't really make a decision as he's president because there's a poll that says that, he's below 50% approval. So he can't do that thing because the American people aren't with him because they don't approve, right? That would be dumb. I think everyone would kind of understand that. But that's where we are. Oh, the polls say that this is what the president should do. I don't care. Polls are nothing. Polls are just a talking point. It's a snapshot of an idea. Who cares? Changes tomorrow. But notice the transition from the event in the Rose Garden was so bad, it didn't allow them to talk about the Supreme Court stuff. And then we immediately transition to, you heard it. Of course, right? It's don't confirm ACB. You're going to hear a lot more of that. The desperation around this. You have to remember, people that are opposed to ACB getting nominated to the Supreme Court, the people that don't want that to happen, they don't care how dumb they sound with the arguments they make against it. All that matters to them is that they're making the argument and that they're getting the benefit of that among their fellow Democrats. All that they can really take away from this is, well, I did my part. I threw everything that I had at this. I was willing to lie, cheat, and steal. You name it, I was willing to do it. Anything to stop ACB from getting nominated to the Supreme Court. No, she's nominated, and it's going to happen. And that brings me to another place here, another level of thinking about this. Friends, if ACB gets nominated, and I'm sorry, if she gets confirmed, rather, if she gets confirmed, goes through, and then Trump, and in the meantime, right around the same period of time, let's say Trump beats COVID-19 entirely, back out on the campaign trail, and then Trump beats Biden, what are Democrats going to cling to in all of this? What's going to be the safety blanket that they're going to have? You have to wonder about this. What are they going to tell themselves? After all they've thrown at this guy and all the challenges of this year, I don't know what their shrieks of despair will sound like, and I don't know what their emotional meltdowns will look like, but I know that it is going to be a truly both horrifying and satisfying experience to observe it all. I don't think they can handle all this, and they might have to.